Your home is paid off. Your retirement accounts are healthy. You're living the American dream. Then it happens. A stroke. A fall. Alzheimer's creeping in like fog over a harbor. Suddenly, you need round-the-clock care and the bill. Try $120,000 a year, every single year. That's $10,000 a month disappearing from everything you've built. Within 3 years, your life savings are gone. Your spouse is left scrambling, potentially facing poverty after a lifetime of financial responsibility. Your children watch helplessly as their inheritance, meant to secure their own retirements, evaporates into the healthcare system. This isn't a nightmare scenario. This is Tuesday afternoon in America for thousands of families. The truth is, nursing home costs aren't just expensive. They're catastrophic. We're talking about an industry that has turned elder care into a wealth extraction machine. And here's the kicker. Medicare covers almost nothing. Medicaid will help, but only after you've spent down nearly every asset you own. You're essentially required to become impoverished before the safety net kicks in. But what if I told you there are completely legal strategies that savvy families use to protect their assets while still qualifying for benefits? What if there were ways to ensure your spouse doesn't end up destitute, and your children aren't forced to choose between their own financial security and your care? Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact methods that estate planning attorneys use for their own families. The strategies that the wealthy have been quietly employing for decades while middle-class America gets financially decimated by long-term care costs. We'll explore everything from the 5-year look-back period to sophisticated trust structures that can shield millions in assets. This isn't about gaming the system or committing fraud. These are legitimate, court-tested strategies that Congress specifically allows because they recognize that impoverishing families shouldn't be the price of growing old in America. Let's start with the brutal mathematics of nursing home costs, because understanding the scope of this threat is crucial to appreciating why asset protection isn't just smart, it's essential. The average cost of a private room in a nursing home has skyrocketed to over $120,000 annually. In high-cost areas like New York or California, you're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 per year. That's more than most people's entire annual income, and it's due every month regardless of the quality of care. Memory care facilities, which many Alzheimer's patients require, can cost even more. We're talking $180,000 to $250,000 annually for specialized dementia care. And here's what really stings. The average nursing home stay is 2.4 years, but that's just an average. 20% of residents stay 5 years or longer. Some families face a decade or more of these crushing expenses. Do the math. Even at the national average, a 3-year stay costs $360,000. A 5-year stay? $600,000. These numbers aren't theoretical. They're the financial reality facing 1.3 million Americans currently living in nursing homes, with 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day. Medicare, the program most people assume will cover their long-term care, provides virtually no help. It covers skilled nursing care for a maximum of 100 days, and only if you meet strict criteria about being hospitalized first and requiring skilled medical care, not just custodial care. Most nursing home residents need custodial care, help with bathing, dressing, eating, basic daily activities. Medicare doesn't cover that at all. So families face a choice. Pay out of pocket until you're broke, or spend down your assets to qualify for Medicaid. This spend-down process is where most families make critical mistakes that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars unnecessarily. Medicaid will cover nursing home costs, but there's a catch. You can only keep $2,000 in countable assets. Your house might be protected while you're alive, but Medicaid has the right to recover costs from your estate after death. Your retirement accounts, your savings, your investments, all of it must be liquidated to pay for care before Medicaid steps in. For married couples, the rules are slightly more generous, but still devastating. The community spouse, the one still living at home, can keep approximately $150,000 in assets and monthly income of around $3,800. Everything above those limits must be spent on the nursing home spouse's care. Imagine working for 40 years, building a $800,000 nest egg, only to watch $650,000 of it disappear into nursing home payments. But here's where it gets interesting. Medicaid has what's called a 5-year look-back period. Any gifts or asset transfers made within 5 years of applying for benefits are scrutinized. Make an improper transfer, and you face a penalty period where you're ineligible for benefits. This is where most families panic and make expensive mistakes. However, and this is crucial, there are numerous exceptions and strategies that allow for proper asset protection even within this look-back period. The key is understanding what Medicaid considers a legitimate transfer versus what triggers penalties. Transfers to certain types of trusts, purchases of exempt assets, and specific gifting strategies can all be done legally and effectively. The wealthy figured this out long ago. They don't lose sleep over nursing home costs because their estate planning attorneys have structured their assets properly. They use irrevocable trusts, strategic gifting programs, and asset repositioning techniques that keep their wealth protected while still qualifying for benefits when needed. The middle class, meanwhile, typically gets advice that sounds something like this. Well, you'll just have to spend down your assets until you qualify for Medicaid. That's not advice. That's surrender, and it's completely unnecessary if you understand the rules and plan accordingly. What we're about to explore are the specific strategies that can protect your assets legally and ethically. From simple techniques that anyone can implement to sophisticated trust structures for larger estates, there are options available at every wealth level. The key is understanding the rules, timing your moves correctly, and avoiding the common pitfalls that trap unprepared families. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. Asset protection from nursing home costs isn't about being wealthy. It's about being informed. The first and most accessible strategy in your asset protection toolkit is understanding exempt assets. These are resources that Medicaid simply cannot touch, regardless of their value. Your primary residence is an example of an exempt asset, protected in most states. But here's what most people don't realize. You can actually increase this protection by making strategic home improvements or paying down your mortgage with countable assets. Think about it. If you have $100,000 sitting in a savings account, that's a countable asset that must be spent down. But if you use that same money to renovate your kitchen, add a bathroom, or install a new roof, you've just converted countable assets into exempt assets. The value is still there, it's just protected now. This isn't hiding money. This is smart repositioning. Your car is another exempt asset, but only one vehicle per household. Families have legitimately purchased $80,000 luxury vehicles or specially equipped vans and had them considered exempt assets. Again, you're not losing the value. You're converting it into a protected form. However, after you pass away, Medicaid will attempt to recover assets from your estate for any expenses they paid on your behalf. This means they may be able to recover your house or car. To solve this, let's move beyond basic exempt assets and talk about more sophisticated strategies. The irrevocable trust is perhaps the most powerful tool in the asset protection arsenal. When properly structured, these trusts can protect unlimited assets from nursing home costs while still providing some benefits to the person who created them. Here's how it works. You transfer assets into an irrevocable trust, typically naming your children or other beneficiaries as the ultimate recipients. The trust is structured so that you retain certain limited rights, perhaps the right to live in your home if it's transferred to the trust, or the right to receive income from investments held by the trust. The key is that you no longer own these assets outright, so they're not counted for Medicaid purposes. The catch? This strategy requires advanced planning. Remember that 5-year look-back period. Any assets transferred to an irrevocable trust must be done at least 5 years before applying for Medicaid benefits. That's why this isn't a crisis planning technique. It's a long-term strategy that requires foresight and commitment. But what if you're already facing an immediate need for long-term care? What if that 5-year window has closed? Don't despair. There are still powerful strategies available, though they require more sophisticated planning and often professional guidance. The Medicaid-compliant annuity is one such technique. By converting countable assets into an income stream through a specially structured annuity, you can often protect significant wealth while still qualifying for benefits. The annuity must meet specific requirements. It must be immediate, irrevocable, and actuarially sound. But when done correctly, it can preserve hundreds of thousands of dollars. For married couples, the strategies become even more nuanced and powerful. The Community Spouse Resource Allowance allows the at-home spouse to retain approximately $150,000 in assets. But through a technique called spousal refusal, the community spouse can actually refuse to contribute their assets to the nursing home spouse's care. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the nursing home spouse can qualify for Medicaid while the community spouse retains significantly more assets. Asset purchase strategies offer another avenue for protection. Instead of simply spending down assets on nursing home care, families can purchase items that are either exempt or provide ongoing value. Prepaying funeral expenses, buying a more expensive home in a state with higher homestead exemptions, or purchasing certain types of life insurance can all serve as effective spend-down strategies that preserve value for the family. The key to all of these strategies is understanding that Medicaid planning isn't about impoverishment. It's about reorganization. You're not making assets disappear. You're restructuring them in ways that comply with Medicaid rules while still providing maximum benefit to your family. Geographic arbitrage plays a role too. Some states are far more generous in their Medicaid rules than others. The homestead exemption varies dramatically by state. Income and asset limits differ. Even the rules around trust protection vary significantly. Families sometimes relocate strategically to take advantage of more favorable Medicaid rules in their new state of residence. But perhaps the most overlooked strategy is the proper use of caregiver agreements. When adult children provide care for aging parents, this care has real economic value. A properly structured caregiver agreement allows families to compensate adult children for this care, effectively transferring assets while receiving legitimate services in return. The key is documenting the arrangement properly and ensuring the compensation is reasonable for the services provided. Finally, these strategies can often be used together to create a plan that works for your situation. The mistake most families make is waiting until crisis hits before exploring these options. By then, many of the most powerful strategies are no longer available. The 5-year look-back period means that effective asset protection requires the kind of advanced planning that most people resist because it forces them to confront uncomfortable realities about aging and long-term care. While you can still protect a portion of your assets if there was no plan when a crisis hit, planning ahead at least 5 years gives you the biggest opportunity to protect the most amount of assets. This is where the wealthy have always had an advantage. They plan early, they plan comprehensively, and they work with professionals who understand these complex rules. But these strategies aren't reserved for the ultra-rich. Middle-class families can implement many of these same techniques with proper guidance and sufficient lead time. The question isn't whether you'll face long-term care costs. The statistics are clear. Most of us will need some form of extended care before we die. The question is whether you'll face those costs with a plan that protects your family's financial security, or whether you'll join the millions of Americans who watch their life savings disappear into the healthcare system. So there you have it. The roadmap that separates families who preserve their wealth from those who watch it vanish into the nursing home abyss. From exempt asset strategies and irrevocable trusts to caregiver agreements and geographic planning, these aren't just theoretical concepts. They're the actual tools that informed families use to navigate the brutal mathematics of long-term care without sacrificing everything they've built. Remember, this isn't about gaming the system. It's about understanding rules that were specifically designed to prevent the complete impoverishment of American families. The wealthy have been using these strategies for decades, while middle-class America gets steamrolled by costs they never saw coming. The clock is ticking on your planning window. Every day you wait is another day closer to that 5-year look-back period that could lock you out of your best options. Don't be the family that discovers these strategies exist only after it's too late to implement them. Your life savings don't have to become a casualty of growing old in America. With proper planning, the right strategies, and sufficient lead time, you can protect what you've built while still ensuring quality care when you need it. The choice is yours, but the time to make it is now. Thanks for joining me today. If this opened your eyes to possibilities you didn't know existed, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because in the end, financial security in retirement isn't about luck. It's about knowledge, and knowledge shared is power multiplied.